Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You guys know what I like to do on my show. Say it with me. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And that's what we want to do today. We want to get you fired up about our guest. I'll be spending time with Stephanie Gonzalez today, and we're talking about her book, Think of Me. So go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, as is tradition here on the show, we always give our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves. There may be some folks out there that are unfamiliar with you or your work. So first question for you, Stephanie, is tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you you?
Well, I am 40 years old. I am a single mother of 5 beautiful children, ranging from 14 to 24. I have 4 sons, 1 daughter. I have battled cancer, still battling cancer. I was diagnosed in April of 2017. I'm going to be a grandma in less than 2 months, and I'm really excited about that.
I remember my mother saying that when she finally became a grandmother, that was one of the happiest stages of her life, moving from that not a grandma into being a grandma stage. And I was like, that is awesome. So it is definitely a nice time for the family. So I'm going to say congratulations. I'm so happy for you. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, being an author, is that something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that this was just an appropriate way to share your story and your wisdom?
It actually became an idea when I was diagnosed. I sat down and I made a bucket list, and that was one of the things on my bucket list, was to tell my story, get some closure, help the person that the book is about get some closure. And it just became a dire need when I was diagnosed.
Absolutely. I can definitely understand that, wanting to make sure that you get as much done as you possibly can. I do understand. Now, when it comes to the title of the book, Think of Me, there have been songs written with that sentiment. There have been, I'm sure, numerous books written with that sentiment. But the thing is that when we think of those words, it always brings up a positive feeling, if you will, when someone says, think of me. Do you have any particular reason why you chose Think of Me to entitle your book?
Actually, I chose the title of the book because that saying has a sentimental place in my heart as well. It reminds me of my first love, and that's what we used to say to each other in place of I love you, or, anytime we were going to part, that was what we said to each other, was think of me. So it actually holds a lot more value.
I like that. That is so sweet. The very, very nice thing to say. I mean, of course, I love you is a nice thing to say to you. I know before someone, asks me and says, Dr. Angela, I love you is good to say too, but think of me. That is a very, very pleasant thing. I like it. Now, when it comes to the appropriate reader for your book, I always ask this question this particular way, because everyone knows someone or can paint the picture appropriately, and that is, would you say that your book is appropriate for someone as young as high school, so that's about age 14 to 18 years old, or would you say they should be a little older, like college age or older?
I'd say 14 to 18 is the perfect age. That's about the age that I was when this took place. So yeah, that's the perfect age.
And I find that so many of our high schoolers are going through much more than what we went through when we were in high school. So I'm finding that the things were before, even 20 years ago, where we would say, oh, no, they don't need to know about that. Nowadays it's like, oh, my goodness, they already know about that. Let's give them the resources that they need so that they can act appropriately. So you are so mindful with that. Now, for some authors, when they write their books, they help the reader along on the journey, or at least that's the way I like to say it. That is, they give us instruction on how to read. For example, some books you can just open up and start reading anywhere. I call that reader's choice. Some folks like to read the last page first, or they like to just kind of drop the book and see where the book leads them. Others, the author will say, well, it's a little better if you read chapter 1 or, section 1 first, because you need to have that background before moving on. Others even do more of a devotional style where you should read about 3 or 4 pages, put it down, let that kind of simmer, and pick it back up the next day. Did you take the reader along on a particular journey in the way in which you formatted the book?
You really have to read it from chapter 1 on, because it does go in chronological order. And so that's, I would say, the best way to read it is definitely from chapter 1 on. And as far as taking a break in between, the people that have read this book and given me feedback, they really have a hard time putting it down. So, yeah, I would say just from chapter 1 as much as you can at one time.
I like that answer. I like that. I love to read, so I would probably be one of those people. Once it gets really good, it's like, wait a minute, cancel the plans. It's me and the book today. I've got to finish this chapter. So I love that you gave us that bit of information there. Now, speaking of bits and pieces, my listeners know that I always give the disclaimer, and that is, if you want to know how the story ends, you gotta buy the book. So the rest of the questions that I ask you are along that vein, where I know that you will not give us all of the juicy details, or I don't expect for you to. We do want for people to purchase a copy of the book, but we do want to know a little bit more about what is the story that you share with us in this book.
Well, this book is a nonfiction book, and it is coming of age. It did take place when I was in high school, leading up until recently. It is about my first love / ex-fiance and the trials and tribulations, not that we went through, but that I put him through. I'm very much the bad guy in this book in the beginning. Without giving away too much, it's just, I wasn't so honest with him. I was very deceptive, about many things. And it is basically the lesson that I want everybody to be able to be taught out of this book, which I want people to know that you can learn and change, and I'm a prime example of that. It's better to bring things to the surface and deal with them rather than be deceptive and lie. And that honesty is the best policy. So that's all I can really say about that.
You really, even in that explanation, you just gave us some nuggets of wisdom there, because I find that too many times people feel that if they are open, if they are truly vulnerable with the person that they love in the beginning stages, that they're afraid that person won't love them anymore. So they kind of just hold or keep some things to themselves, where usually it's not as bad as they think, or even if it is that bad, if the person had known sooner, they could have talked it out, worked it out, or whatever. So you really gave some great information there, and that is the open communication and just be open and honest with each other. I love that. I love that. Now,
Thank
when it
you.
comes to writing a book that is about one's own life, be it that it is kind of like a memoir where we're looking at everything that we've done, or where we're writing a fictional story but using some of our own personal life experiences to help form the plot of the book, would you say that it is easy to write that story because you already know how the story ends? You know, you already know that the ending is going to be okay? Or would you say that it's still a work unto itself because you still want to craft the story for the reader?
Oh, you know what? That is a very good question. Well, first, let me start by saying that in no way, by any means, was any of it easy to write. I didn't realize before I started it that it was going to be reliving the experience. But it was almost a little bit harder than the first time because now I'm older, I'm wiser, I'm more mature, and I'm reliving this looking back like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? So it was no, by any means, easy, for sure. It was definitely not easy. I literally relived it, took some blows to my confidence and my ego, but I'm very happy to have been able to get this work out and hopefully inspire some people to, do the right thing, make the right decisions, learn from my mistakes.
I kind of chuckled to myself a little bit there when you said, what was I thinking? What was I doing? And I think any of us that have lived some years here on this beautiful earth of ours, we have all had that experience. If you've been blessed to get to your 40s, your 50s, or your 60s or so, then we all have had those moments where we go, I don't know what I was thinking, but boy, did you think you had it all together in the moment. So there are definitely lessons to be learned along the way. So thank you for being open in that and letting someone know that it's okay to be able to look back and say, wow, I needed some more time on that one. Now, when it comes to determining which bits and pieces you were going to include in the story, every writer, be it that it is, again, a fiction or a nonfiction, you guys have to decide, here's the long story, right? This is the all of what I want to say. But I can't put all of this in the book, either because it would be 400 pages long, or, some people have said, don't put me in the book, or, that's a little too private, maybe we shouldn't, in the editing process. But how do you determine which pieces you will include, or flip side, how did you determine which pieces you would exclude, however you choose to answer that?
Well, the first thing I did was I contacted my ex-fiance / first love, and I asked him if it was okay to even do the book. And, I also let him know that when I was done, I could send over a copy and he could, have whatever he wanted taken out. As I started writing the book, I really decided just to include the whole story. And as far as whole story, I mean, interesting parts. Obviously, I didn't include anything that didn't really matter or wasn't interesting. But as far as the whole story goes, I mean, I pretty much included everything, the whole story as the whole story.
And I thank you for saying that bit and piece. I don't know if everyone realizes how important it is to have that okay, that statement of approval for when you're including other people in your story, to have that person give you the okay to include them. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. That's an aha moment for someone out there that's like, oh wow, I didn't know I needed to do that. Okay,
Yeah.
mental note, send an email to this guy real quick and make sure it's okay to include them. So thank you for that technical piece. Stephanie, it is time for us to go to break, but before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book, where can we get a copy, and, of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
The title of my book is Think of Me. It is available on Amazon or wherever books are sold. And I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook, Stephanie Gonzalez.
Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is Stephanie Gonzalez, and we're talking about her book, Think of Me. Now, Stephanie, you gave quite a curious subtitle to your book, and I like it. I know someone was saying, wait a minute, what was that subtitle again? Now I'm curious, right? So somebody's ears perked up when you mentioned that. I have to ask, why did you give that subtitle? If you could mention the subtitle again, just in case someone missed it, they're going, what is Dr. Angela talking about? So what is your subtitle again, and why was it important to add that piece?
My subtitle is, Would You Still Be in Love with Someone After You've Been Apart for Over 20 Years? I feel that it was important to add that. Number one, it definitely hooks the readers, and I knew that. But number two, it's really the question at hand when you finish the book. It's kind of like the conclusion of the book. It's the question that everybody might ask after they are done reading the book. And it's really the question that I've asked myself for 20 years. Basically is if I'm still in love with someone that I've been apart for over 20 years.
Oh, that is a good question to ask at the next family gathering. Boy, have you just sparked a great conversation starter. You know, when it's just the adults and the kids have gone off and kind of done their own thing, and someone says, so, here's a question. You know, everyone's going to put their phone down and get into that conversation. That subtitle alone is enough to really get everyone thinking. I agree with you. I definitely agree with you on that one. Now, with that being said, what would you say is one of the most important lessons or pieces of information that you want for a reader to have learned or gotten from having read your book?
It's definitely the fact that honesty is always the best policy, no matter how hard or uncomfortable the situation may be. It's better to bring things to the surface and deal with them than to let them snowball out of hand and, one lie to lead to another lie, lead to another lie. So that's definitely the most important piece of information that I want my reader to learn.
Couldn't agree with you more there. Now, for some folks out there, one of the things that they like to do is they want to read a book that is current. Like they want to read a book that is dealing with the stuff that's going on in the world today. Now, I have spoken with some very senior authors who said, listen, I wrote this story like in the 40s or the 50s, but it's still relevant today because people are still fill in the blank, falling in love or breaking up or trying to figure out this thing called faith, so on and so forth. So their story, though it may have taken place many years ago, it's still relevant to what's going on today. How would you say that your book is relevant to what's going on in our world today?
Oh, just to reiterate your answer, it's basically is love. People still fall in love, and unfortunately, people are always going to struggle with honesty and deceit. And it's honesty is always the best policy. Also, I want my children to learn that people can change, and I'm a prime example of that.
You're so right. I think that for so many folks, because they have a hard time with change, they think that other people could not possibly change. And in my lifetime, I know that I have seen so many people that are truly dedicated to, making that journey for self, just making sure that they do actually become their best selves, and they really are committed to it. And you're right, you really can make the change if you're doing it for yourself, if you're doing it for the right reasons. I love that piece of encouragement that you're giving along the way. Now, when you were writing, did you ever think that, man, I can't get it all in just one book? And I kind of alluded to that before, where some authors have said, I can't tell the whole story because it's going to be 400 pages. So I'm not going to do that, to the readers. But
Right.
They did decide at some future point that they would simply write a part 2 or a book 2, or, be it another name or whatever. But this is the other piece of the puzzle, or part of the story. Have you ever thought about or considered doing that, or do you feel that you've kind of told the story all in this one book?
I'm definitely considering writing a part 2, most definitely. I've even thought about writing a part 2, maybe 2 part 2s, and one being a fiction, where I just kind of go off of the first story, but, add some, fairy tale to it. And I've also thought about making a part 2 of nonfiction that just continues from the first one. Definitely, most definitely.
Oh, now see, I've never gotten that answer before. Oh, that was good. I like it. And see, people always ask, well, Dr. Angela, you ask certain questions of every author. Don't you ever get tired of asking those questions? And it's like, absolutely not. I never know what anyone's going to say. I tell you, thank you, Stephanie. No one's ever said that, but I think that is a good idea. Like that fiction version, because people think they know where the story's going, right? But then you're going to kind of do some plot twists in there and use your imagination. Oh, that's a great idea. I hope that we are blessed to be able to not only get part 2 of the actual story, but to be able to get that fictional, that alternate ending, if you will, as well. That's a cool answer. I love that. Love it.
Thank
Now,
you.
I would like to shift gears just a little, and that is ask you some of the process questions. My listeners know that I am dedicated to asking these questions for our aspiring authors out there. So it's about when you were still kind of in the beginning stages of your book. So every author has to decide, do I self-publish? Do I use the professionals? Or do I pitch my story to the big boys? Which way did you decide to put your book out there, and why was it important that you do it that way?
I definitely decided to self-publish. I, in the past, had a publisher, and when it came down to, dates and timeline, that they wanted things done, it really deterred me from the writing process. And so I went ahead and self-published so that I could do it in my own time, at my own convenience. And so, self-publishing was definitely the only way for me to go. But, different people are different, and different things work for different people. So that was just my process for sure.
And you never know what someone's going to say. Like, you may know, as the host, I may know that, okay, well, this is a self-published book, and that's fine. I think that more and more people are using self-published, but you never know the motivation behind it. And everyone has a story as to why they have chosen to self-publish their book. And I'm finding that it is really giving a lot of people the encouragement or the inspiration that they need to go on and publish their book. People are buying books. They really don't care that much if it's a big guy, a medium guy, or a little guy. They just want good stories, So thank you for mentioning that. Now, when it comes to literary success, Many times when we talk about our day-to-day successes in the world, many people will say, well, a successful person, drives a luxury car, or they have one of those exotic cars that you can, they're only handmade, that type of thing. Or they live, in a mansion of a particular size, X amount of bedrooms on X amount of land. But when I talk to authors about literary success, sometimes it includes that stuff, sometimes it doesn't. Everyone seems to have a different opinion. What do you believe is literary success, or what would that look like? What does that look like to you?
To me, when it comes to nonfiction, you're really just, telling a story that actually took place. And to me, literary success on a nonfiction book is just what you've learned from your mistakes. What have you learned from this experience that you're talking about, and how has that made you a better person? That is what success means to me.
I cannot agree with you more. I find that I think as we grow and mature as individuals, we understand that the tangible things are all great and fine. Don't get me wrong, but it's something about that that journey of self, that spiritual growth that we get, like the maturing that we find, that it's like, okay, this is my truth. And this is exactly who I am, and I'm going to love myself standing here in my truth. That really is powerful. I love it. I love it. Now, as far as holding the first copy of your book in your hands, I know that, you've gone through the editing process, you've chosen your cover, you've decided this, that, and the other, and now you have it, I like to say, hot off the presses, right? Shows you how old I am. So you have your book in your hands. How do you feel in that moment?
To be honest, I felt like it was surreal. When it first showed published and for sale online, I was like, oh my gosh, I really did it. I never thought that I would get to the end, let alone, it be actually published. So it was definitely a feeling of accomplishment as well.
I love it. Well, Stephanie Gonzalez, I have enjoyed my time with you here today. Thank you so much for coming on. Now, before I let you go,
thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Before I let you go, can you please remind everyone what is the title of your book, where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
The title is Think of Me. You can get it on Amazon or wherever books are sold. And I am on Facebook at Stephanie Gonzalez.
Thank you again, Stephanie, for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And listeners, thank you for spending time with me here today as well. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend it with me today, and I thank you for doing so. I hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you again today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.